Hello everyone and welcome into Coach Kegg's Sports. This is the CFL DFS video for week number 13. If you're joining me for the very first time, first of all, welcome in. Second of all, this is how today's video will be structured. We'll be going over my CFL DFS sheet for week number 13. It's a 3-game slate, so we might want to get a little bit more creative this week just in general. I will be highlighting all the relevant players for this week, whether or not I consider them a GPP option, a cash game option, a GPP paydown option, kind of a dart throw. And then I will also be mentioning whether or not I'll be in line with the field, overweight to the field, slightly overweight, slightly underweight, just to kind of give you guys a little bit of ownership perspective. And then this sheet will be updated on my Patreon page throughout the weekend. It's a little bit interesting slate with the Labor Day Classic. So we have Sunday and Monday. So this video is obviously coming out a little bit later in the week than it typically would on most weeks, but should make for a very interesting week overall. But without further ado, we're going to get right into it. We're going to start off with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. We got Zach Collaros at quarterback. He's $9,300. GPP option, probably going to be slightly underweight to the field on him this week overall. I just find myself personally gravitating to other quarterbacks this week. Collaros has had really one good week this year, and he's kind of been disappointing otherwise. So maybe not quite as much upside there as we're used to. Plus, he does have some banged up wide receivers at this point in time. And then we move down to Brady Oliveira, running back, GPP option at $10,900. Probably going to be in line with the field on him. Maybe ever so slightly overweight to the field if they rely on the run game just a little bit more. Behind him, we have Peyton Logan. He's at $4,000. He made his season debut last week, and he did operate kind of as that kick returner. So a little bit of upside there if you really want to take the chance on the smaller slate, but not something I'm personally doing this week overall. And then I have Nick Naminsky, a wide receiver, $9,100. I have him as a GPP option if he ultimately ends up playing. Probably going to be in line with the field on him. Technically, he's been limited in practice all week due to a head injury. Probably safe to assume that's a concussion, so he's technically listed as questionable to play. But due to the fact that he's been limited all week, more likely than not that he will be out. We'll get that depth chart coming out tomorrow, so we will get some verified confirmation on that. And then in terms of other news at the wide receiver position, Dalton Schoen still on that 6-game injured list, but was able to practice in full all week. Technically listed as questionable, so there is a chance that he's back. If Nick Naminsky's out and Dalton Schoen's back, $6,700, very viable price tag there, especially if he's anywhere close to 100% at this point in time. Obviously, you can take shots on him. You can take shots on Dylan Mitchell. Jair Stearns is going to be out this week. He's dealing, I believe, with the shoulder injury that has placed him on the 1-game injured list. Kirk Wheatfall is kind of like the last man standing in terms of the major wide receivers on this team. So he's at $7,000 GPP option, probably going to be in line with the field, maybe ever so slightly overweight to the field. And then if you want to take a shot on somebody else, Kevin Sklaricka, Dylan Mitchell, Joey Corcoran, do it, but I'm not really sure how this passing game is going to look this week overall. And then they did make a couple other transactions at the wide receiver position. Gavin Cobb has been promoted from the practice roster. He's not on DraftKings at this point in time. And then they did sign both Kyron Moore and Cam Eccles to the practice roster. We'll see if either of those two get elevated for this week overall. Then we move down to the Blue Bombers defense. They're at $3,600, so their pay down option at this point in time. A little bit tougher matchup going against the Roughriders, but probably going to be in line with the field on them overall this week. And then speaking of that Roughriders team, we have Trevor Harris at quarterback. He's $9,600. GPP option, probably going to be ever so slightly overweight to the field on him this week. So definitely do like the upside that you could potentially have in this matchup. And he's getting a little bit of boost at that wide receiver position this week overall. Then we move down to running back with AJ Allott. He's a GPP option at $9,100. Probably going to be slightly overweight to the field on him once again this week. He's kind of been one of those steady Eddie running backs pretty much throughout the season. Definitely do like his upside though once again. And then we move down to the wide receiver position. We do have some news here. So Mario Alford was able to practice in full all week due to hip injury, so he is listed as available. So it's safe to assume that he goes back to being the primary returner for this team overall. He's $2,500, which is a viable GPP paydown option, especially on a smaller slate. And then we move down to the wide receivers. Keyshawn Johnson, Dante Myers, both GPP options at $9,800 and $9,900 respectively. I'm probably going to be in line with the field on both of them this week. Definitely do love the upside that they could potentially have at the same time as well. Tommy Neal at $4,400. I have him technically listed as a potential cash game option. Probably going to be in line with the field on him. Although we did get some news this week that Aju was signed back to the team. He was with the team obviously last year. He was a part of the preseason roster, I believe, for the Indianapolis Colts. Did not ultimately end up making the team and has since returned to the CFL. And I believe he was signed to the active roster. We'll see whether or not he is going to be active for this week or not. Obviously, he has a familiarity with the team and the offense, so there is a chance that he could play this week overall. And then also, Sean Bain Jr. was able to practice in full all week due to his knee injury. technically listed as questionable, so that is the first time that he's been listed as questionable so far this season, so that is at least good for his imminent return, whether that's this week or in a future week. And then Dre McCray, who has been the return man in place of Mario Alford in recent weeks, is out this week due to a head injury. Then we move down the Roughriders defense. They're $4,400, so GPP option probably going to be in line with the field on them. I'd probably be a little bit higher on them if they did not have the higher price tag this week overall, though. Then we move down to the Toronto Argonauts. Chad Kelly was able to practice in a limited capacity on Thursday, but wasn't able to practice on Fridays, so he's still on that 6-game injury list. Nick Arbuckle's still going to be the starter. Nick Arbuckle's up to $11,000 at this point in time. He's played really well as of late, so I do have him listed as a GPP option. Probably going to be in line with the field, maybe ever so slightly underweight to the field just with that price tag. However, this running back position, not the best right now at this point in time, so they're probably going to have to throw the ball quite a bit. And then one other piece of news at quarterback for the Toronto Argonauts, they did sign Max Duggan to the practice roster. He most recently played with the St. Louis Battlehawks in the UFL. Then we move down to the running back position. Deonta McMahon was not able to practice on Thursday or Friday due to an ankle injury, so probably going to be out this week. Mayan Williams was able to practice in full on Thursday, didn't practice at all on Friday, so not sure when he's going to be back at this point in time. He's obviously been on the 6-game injury list for a bit of time at this point in time due to that head injury. So Spencer Brown looks to be the guy this week, coming off a pretty strong week in his own right last week, $5,500. Potential pay down option, probably going to be in line with the field on him. And then if McMahon and Williams both miss this week, we likely see Penny Boone promoted from that practice roster. Then we move down to the wide receiver position. So we're going to start off with the transaction that the Argonauts did make this week. So Makai Polk is returning to the team. He was signed to the active roster. He's on DraftKings at $4,600. You can play him if you really want to. I'm not sure how well that's going to work out week one, so I'm probably just not going to play him just in general, but there is some potential upside there at the same time as well. DeMonte Coxie last week was placed on that 6-game injury list. DeVaris Daniels did not practice on Thursday or Friday due to a hip injury, so there are opportunities to be had here. So DeJuan Brissett, $6,300. GPP option, probably going to be in line with the field on him, maybe ever so slightly overweight to the field. Kevin Meidel, who's had a pretty strong season so far, $7,400. GPP option, probably going to be in line with the field on him as well. And then Jake Herslow, who's played exceptionally well as of late, he's at $7,100. GPP option, probably going to be in line with the field, maybe ever so slightly overweight to the field on him once again this week, although he probably will draw a good amount of ownership considering what he's been able to do the last couple of games. And then last but not least, we have the Toronto Argonauts defense. They're $3,700. Viable paydown option as they do go against the Tiger Cats this week. I definitely do like their defense overall. They've been a little bit more hit or miss so far this season, but if they can get some pressure on Bo Levi Mitchell, if they can stop the run game, there is potential possibilities for them in this matchup overall. Then we move down to that Tiger Cats defense. So we got Bo Levi Mitchell at quarterback, $10,500. He's played really well so far this season, minus their most recent game, but $10,500 GPP option, probably going to be in line with the field on him once again. At running back, we got Greg Bell, $7,700. GPP option, probably going to be in line with the field, maybe ever so slightly overweight to the field on him once again this week. And then behind him, we got Antti Litri, unable to practice once again on Thursday and Friday due to a hamstring injury. He's likely out once again this week. However, Johnny Augustine was able to practice in full on Thursday and Friday due to his hip injury, so he should be back for this week overall. And then they did move Kevin Brown back over to the practice roster. Move down to the wide receiver position. I'm mainly just looking at the same three guys we've been looking at for most of the season, and that's going to be Kenny Lawler, Keandre Smith, and Tim White. All three GPP options, probably going to be in line with the field on all three of them. However, in their most recent game, we did see a Shamar Bridges slight breakout. Obviously, he was really good for them last year. He's at $6,100. If you want to take that shot on him in a smaller slate, you can definitely do that at the same time as well. And then in terms of the injury notes at that wide receiver position, Brendan O'Leary-Orange limited on Friday due to a hand injury. We'll see whether or not he goes this week or not. Tyler Terneski was able to practice in full on Thursday and Friday due to that shoulder injury, so he likely will be available for this week overall. And then Isaiah Wooden, their return man, was unable to practice on Thursday and Friday due to that shoulder injury, so looking like he's going to be out once again this week. And then we move down to Tiger Cats defense, $4,300. They do have some upside, but we'll be slightly underweight to the field on them overall. Just not quite in love with that price tag, and I do like some of the cheaper options in terms of the defenses for this week overall. Then we move down to the Edmonton Elks. We got Cody Fajardo at quarterback. He is the cheapest quarterback of the starters on the slate, so he's at $9,000. GPP option, probably going to be ever so slightly underweight to the field on him. I don't feel like he quite has the upside that a lot of these other guys do. But, anything can happen on any given slate. Javon Leaks up to $7,100. Personally, I'm not playing him. Obviously, the return touchdown in their most recent game definitely propelled his price tag. And then Justin Rankin, he's been really good as of late, but $9,700 GPP option, probably going to be slightly underweight to the field on him in comparison to the other running backs. And then we move down to the wide receiver position. Stephen Dunbar Jr. was placed on that 6-game injured list, and they did bring in a couple wide receivers to the practice roster, and Ayer Asante and Jalen Calhoun. And then Adoyo Hilaire, probably mispronouncing his name once again, was promoted from their practice roster to the active roster for this week overall. But in terms of the wide receivers that I'm actually looking to play, it's mainly just Curly Gittens Jr. and Keon Julian Grant, $6,800 and $6,600 respectively. GPP options probably going to be slightly overweight to the field on both of them this week overall. And then we move down to the Elks defense. They are at $4,500 this week, which is just too expensive of a price tag. GPP option, but will be underweight to the field on them overall. And then we move down to our final team for this week, and that's going to be the Calgary Stampeders. Vernon Adams Jr., $10,300 GPP option, and I will be slightly overweight to the field on him this week overall. I definitely do like his upside this week in this matchup, and I don't think the ownership's quite going to be there to match the potential upside that he could have just in general. And then we move down to Dedrick Mills, our running back, GPP option. Maybe ever so slightly overweight to the field, but probably closer to in line with the field on him this week overall. Although I do like his price tag this week overall, but quite a few running backs that I do like just in general. So I might be getting to more running backs in my flex spot this week overall. At fullback, William Langelis did not practice on Thursday and Friday due to illness, so we'll see whether or not he's good to go this week or not. And then in terms of the wide receiver position, Tevin Jones, he was able to practice in full on Thursday and Friday. He missed last week due to illness, and then we had Dominique Grimes limited practice on Thursday, but was able to practice in full on Friday due to his quad injury that caused him to miss last week. So both those guys should be back this week overall. Malik Henry's been on the 6-game injured list, was able to practice in a limited capacity on Thursday and Friday due to his knee injury. So it's looking a little bit more like a crowded wide receiver room once again. So if you want to play Clark Barnes, Eric Brooks, Tevin Jones, Dominique Grimes, or Damian Alford, you can definitely do it. But the guy I'm primarily going to be targeting is going to be Jalen Philpott, $7,200. GPP option, probably going to be in line with the field, maybe ever so slightly overweight to the field on him once again this week. And then we move down to that Calgary Stampeders defense. They're $3,500. I think they're a pretty talented defense. There is some potential upside there going against the Edmonton Elks, especially without Stephen Dunbar. So they are a GPP pay down option, probably going to be slightly overweight to the field on them this week overall. If I'm playing cash games, they're probably going to be my cash game defense just in general. And then with that being said, we got 3 teams on the bye this week, and that's going to be the BC Lions, the Montreal Alouettes, and the Ottawa Redblacks. But with that being said, that's what I do have for my CFL DFS sheet for week number 13. As always, if you have any questions related to CFL DFS, be sure to drop them down in the comment section, and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. And then once again, I'll be listing all the depth charts down in the comment section of this video, as well as any other major news that does come out throughout the week. Otherwise, this sheet will be updated on my Patreon page. Very small monthly donation over there. You get access to my CFL DFS sheets for a month. You also get access to my daily MLB DFS notes, and the NFL season's starting up pretty soon, so you'll get access to my NFL DFS player pools as well as my snap count spreadsheets. So a very good time to get signed up over there if that's something you're interested in. But with that being said, if you're brand new to my channel, checking out for the very first time, or have yet to subscribe, please consider doing so. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now, we have MLB DFS in terms of core picks, typically Monday through Friday. I do apologize once again this week. Was dealing with some sickness as well as a couple other compounding factors where I didn't get quite as many videos out this week as I would have liked. So I definitely do apologize for that once again. Then I do have my CFL DFS video coming out once a week. Typically that comes out on Wednesdays. Obviously this week was a little bit different with the later games in the week, but definitely look out for that in future weeks. And then I will also be putting out some sort of NFL DFS video as we do head into week 1 of the NFL season. And then last but not least, if you're interested in sports betting, if you're interested in prop betting, be sure to check out the links and promo codes down in the description below for BetUS and PrizePicks. If you're a brand new user to either one of those sites, when you sign up, make your initial deposit, you will get a first match deposit bonus. For PrizePicks, it's 100% match up to $100, and then for BetUS, it's 125% match up to $2,000. So some pretty great opportunities to be had out there. And then with that being said, if you have any other additional questions related to that whatsoever, feel free to reach out to me, whether it's down in the comment section of this video or on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport, and be more than happy to help you with that journey as well. But with that being said, that's all that I truly have for this week's video. Definitely do appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. Definitely means a lot to me. I hope that each and every one of you have a great rest of your day and some pretty good luck and CFL DFS for week number 13.